That old tune. He felt he'd never be so young, never so gay again. All his life he'd sought for that time. He wanted that feeling back. He wanted the wind in your hair, devil may care ease of it, the I can do everything, whistle down the wind joy of it. He was old now, often lost in his thoughts for hours at a time. So lost he forgot to finish dressing or to eat. They'd taken to phoning him at regular intervals. That first at 10 o'clock in the morning, "Dad, are you up? Did you like the bacon I bought?" They were subtle, never directly accusing him of leaving them as he knew he was. They rang again later in the day to ask if he'd read some article in the paper, meaning had he remembered to go out and buy one. And they'd ring near bedtime to check he was aware of the time and had indeed locked the back door. He didn't mind all this attention, they meant well, and he was fond of them. But it was distracting. He felt he had a big job in hand, one that required concentration over considerable time. Somewhere out there, or rather in there, inside his brain, was something he'd lost and had to recover. It existed, he had no doubts at all about that. His trouble, what was slowing him down, was that he could not remember what it was. He did not let this worry him at all, for he held to a simple faith that he would know it when he saw it. His task was to keep looking until he found it. Then the job would be done and he could take a rest, have days off, get back to normality, rejoin the family, so to speak. He felt a little burdened because it was all up to him. No one could help him. They were his memories that had to be trawled. He had to be the one to get on with it. He developed a system. The feeling he was tracking had to be between certain years. After his time at the Children's Hospital, he thought, and before his own family. Some 14 years. That narrowed it down. He worked systematically along his childhood, searching for that moment of total elation. His time at Oxford, his graduation, Africa. He took in the time he met Jane and Phoebe and all the women whose paths had crossed his in those early years. Sometimes he took time off from his researches to congratulate himself. He'd been a lucky, lucky chap. All those women, places, opportunities. He started to write notes and then write up the notes so that when he was tired of travelling inside his head, he could lift his notebook close to his old eyes and read about himself. He was starting to enjoy himself. The family noticed. "You're looking very well, Dad. What have you been up to? Who is she then?" They were teasing him gently. They guessed he had important stuff in hand. However, the time came one day when he felt a shot of despair. He had revisited such wonderful times in his life, looked at them now from many angles, but nowhere had he found that takes your breath away moment that eluded him. Perhaps he had been wrong after all. He had been suffering from a cruel delusion, and it was a taunt from fate he felt he must deserve. This searching, this hankering for so slight a thing, if it could be called a thing, was wearing him down, beginning to torment him. It was now 11 o'clock on a fine summer morning. His son had rung, the bacon call, and announced he'd be round to take him for a spin and pub lunch. He sat down on the window seat and read from his notebook, shutting his eyes now and again to picture the place, the person he'd written about, and then he slept. The rattle of the key in the front door woke him. His son loitered in the front hall by the mirror, whistling, and the old man heard him and the tune, and suddenly, wonderfully, his heart soared. He closed his eyes to relish the moment, the exquisite perfection of the nanosecond when it all came together as it was meant, when all was as it should be and you knew it to be so. This was it, again. He had not been wrong, and yet he had. It was not a time he'd been after, but a conjunction of feelings, a special warmth made up of happiness, gratitude, a sense of rightness. The search was over. He stood as his son came into the room. His smile was luminous. "Hello, my boy. I'm very glad to see you this lovely morning. Give me your arm."